Good morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where the theme of today's episode is casting, because a plethora of casting announcements came out late last week. Like on Friday, there was just like an explosion of casting news, some of it pretty darn exciting. And actually, for the most part, the word of the day was diversity, a word many people were eager to hear because of the whitewashing scandal, which also was a big deal late last week with both Ghost in the Shell and to some degree Doctor Strange. I think Ghost in the Shell really pushed it over the edge, and then people needed like other examples, so then they called out Marvel on it. But before the Ghost in the Shell image came out, everyone seemed kind of cool for the most part, I think, with what was going on with Tilda Swinton and Doctor Strange. So it's a very interesting situation. We'll see how it develops, but for those of you who are a little bit, bummed out by what happened last week, I think you'll be very happy with this news. But first, let's talk about some white casting, and this is very exciting. That's that Channing Tatum looks to be joining Kingsman 2, The Golden Circle. He tweeted about it, and I think that it's not only very exciting for the sequel, but also for Channing Tatum himself. And it proves that he is an incredibly savvy business person. I got the chance to see him at a press conference, ask him some questions for the Book of Life, that animated movie that he did a voice for, and I have to say, he did come across as someone very intelligent and savvy when it comes to managing his career. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about Channing Tatum's new game plan where he makes big movies, but he also does a plethora of cameos. Plethora also seems to be the word for the day. A plethora of cameos on the side, right? He does a small bit for the Coen brothers in Hail Caesar, for Quentin Tarantino in The Hateful Eight, and now for Matthew Vaughn in Kingsman, because I would suspect this is a cameo, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, because I think that best fits with Channing Tatum's schedule, and also it's such late casting, and there wasn't a major announcement from the film, right? So that even more lends credence to the cameo theory, and also I think you don't want to take away from Taron Egerton, and I think there are a lot of similarities between Channing Tatum and Taron Egerton, which in a cameo works to the movie's favor, but in a full-blown role perhaps does not. But I think that Channing Tatum's, cameo focus is very, very clever. And also, by the way, for those of you wondering if this is going to delay Gambit, I don't think so, because again, well, Gambit's already delayed, but any more so because this is again a cameo, so he can do this pretty quickly. But by doing cameos, Channing Tatum is able to work more, so he gets himself out there more, because all these movies, believe me, use him to promote them, because they know that he has like such a big pull with audiences. Although, considering Hateful Eight turned out great, he was wonderful in that film, but Hail Caesar was, I think, a real disappointment. So he wants to be careful not to oversaturate himself and go too far in the other direction. But right now, these movies cast him in a small role. He gets to work with a wonderful director, forge new relationships, make his resume look a little bit better, and they get somebody to promote their movie. Like, remember all the press he did for Hateful Eight? Channing Tatum did more press for Hateful Eight than anybody else involved in the film, and he had the smallest role. He was very good, though. He was very, very good. If you haven't seen The Hateful Eight, it's out available now on streaming, so you really have no excuse. But he's very, very good in the film. And for those of you, a couple people were like, oh, it's a spoiler. Why'd you tell me? He's in the opening credits. And also advertised the movie a whole lot. I mean, his Frozen and also Beyonce performance on Lip Sync Battle were some of the biggest watched lip sync battles of all time, and that was all to promote The Hateful Eight. So I think that he's going to play someone who works for the Statesman in the film. I think he's going to be like one of their agents, and I think he might be a Jack Davenport-style cameo. Maybe they start out the movie introducing the Statesman, something happens to one of their agents, so Channing Tatum gets to do an awesome action sequence in the style of Kingsman, which I'm sure is a world everybody wants to play in now. Then he gets to peace out and, be involved in this movie, then go work on other films and just keep going. So I think it's a really clever strategy for both sides, for Kingsman and Channing Tatum in the long run, and I'm curious how you feel about it. All right, so that's the first story of the day. And also, I think doing Kingsman is going to give him a little more credibility going into Gambit, which is another good, Matthew Vaughn, of course, is heavily involved in the X-Men franchise, so he can get his stamp of approval. I really have a lot of faith in Gambit. I really strongly believe in that project coming together the way that it is. Doug Liman, come on, it's going to be amazing. And I think Channing Tatum, if you've seen Jupiter Ascending, One of the only good things about that movie is Channing Tatum's performance. I think he makes a very good action hero, especially in like a sci-fi or genre setting. So I was impressed. I think there's real potential here. He just needs a good team to help him realize it. Something Dwayne Johnson doesn't always seem to realize, that it's not, it takes a village to make a movie star. And I think Dwayne Johnson right now needs a little bit better people in his village, at least writing his jokes. All right, so anyway, that's the first story of the day. The second story of the day, I'm really excited about this because, like many people, I was just absolutely blown away by the quality of The People versus O.J. Simpson on the FX network. If you haven't seen this, it's available, I think, for streaming now. You can certainly purchase it on iTunes. On the FX network. They've finished all 10 episodes, and it's really a wonderful, wonderful crime drama. And you think you know the O.J. Simpson case, but you don't. Believe me, you got to watch this. The performances are absolutely spectacular. And one of the standouts is Courtney B. Vance as Johnny Cochran. He's really a special performance here, really spectacular. I was very impressed with his work. Johnny Cochran had been lampooned by the media quite a bit, and Courtney B. Vance makes him a really dynamic, real individual. Really good stuff. So I'm so pleased that he is one of the first people, I believe actually the first person, to get something off of the miniseries. The whole cast is spectacular. Expect a slew of nominations for Emmys and Golden Globes when the time comes. But Courtney B. Vance seems to be the first to get something out of this, and that is a role in Tom Cruise's The Mummy. So wow, he not only got something, he got something good. I hope he has a legitimate role. But this is a movie, of course, remember from my preview of the summer 2017 movies, stars Tom Cruise, Jake Johnson from Jurassic World, the guy with the Jurassic Park t-shirt, and also from New Girl, and also Sophia Boutella, and also Annabelle Wallis from the Annabelle movie is also apparently going to be in the movie. But this sounds like a very good film, and now Courtney B. Vance has joined the cast, and I hope in a substantial role. So this is very exciting. I'm so happy for him. I think that it only makes, and this is another story, just like the first one. It makes The Mummy stronger too. It makes it a stronger movie. So I'm glad that, that was one of the great things, by the way, about The People versus O.J. Simpson, and that they had a very diverse cast, and nobody was playing a token role. No one was playing a stereotypical role. Everybody was just playing people, and it gave a lot of opportunity to actors of color that doesn't usually exist. That kind of meaty role is very rare, sadly. So I'm glad that they created it. I'm glad that Courtney B. Vance got it. I'm glad that he knocked it out of the park, and I'm glad someone recognized it and cast him in another movie. That's the way it's supposed to work. And so this is very encouraging. All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day is the Spider-Man Homecoming movie continues to come together in a very interesting manner. Now, as you know, Tom Holland, of course, is Peter Parker. And then Zendaya was cast a couple of weeks ago and got a lot of coverage for it, so she did her job. She's like the Channing Tatum of that movie, getting people interested in the film. And she was cast in some friend role. They said it wasn't a big deal, but they've just cast two more roles that add a lot more diversity to the film, which is actually kind of interesting because it looks like they're trying to create a Queens high school that would actually look like Queens today, right? The kind of school that Peter Parker today would go to. I argue that Peter Parker would be Miles Morales today, and I really still wish they had kind of gone that route, but there's such a strong reaction so far to Tom Holland's Peter Parker that I'm very excited to see it. Also, as you might recall, that's who I thought they should have hired. I'm glad they did. I'm glad he's working out. If you want to get to know Tom Holland, go watch The Impossible. Very, very good movie. And it'll also get you, more familiar with J.A. Bayona's work, and he's a fantastic director who's doing the upcoming film A Monster Calls. So anyway, the casting that was announced late on Friday was that Tony Revolori from the Grand Budapest Hotel and Dope is going to play Peter Parker's nemesis at school, which to me says Flash Thompson, which is kind of like the Reggie Mantle, for those of you who are more familiar with like the classic Archie comics of the Spider-Man universe. But Flash Thompson has a very interesting story. He goes on to fight with the military. He loses his legs. He's a double amputee. Then he bonds with the Venom symbiote and becomes the new Venom. So that's it. So if they're thinking, we all know they're thinking of doing a Venom movie, Tony Revolori could be kind of involved in that. We'll see. But I think that if he's playing Peter Parker's nemesis at school, he's got to be Flash Thompson, right? Why would you, kind of like underscore the diverse casting by creating a new character when there's one that exists? Who is Peter Parker's nemesis at school? Then Laura Harrier was cast. She's from One Life to Live. I didn't know that soap operas were still on the air. Apparently, they're not giving up. And she, who is she going to play? They said she'll be playing a more significant character in Peter Parker's life. She could be Liz Allen, or she could be one of the big two, Mary Jane or Gwen Stacy. So I think it's interesting. I mean, that's a very bold move for them to do that. I think that they have to, especially after the reaction to Doctor Strange. I mean, they have Benedict Wong is playing Wong, but Doctor Strange's assistant or manservant, which is not good. But there's no other Asian actors in a movie that takes place in a large part in Nepal, right? So that's kind of bad. So I can see them being like, well, let's not do that again. So I think if you're going to have, I think you cannot avoid people saying, well, is this a high school in Queens today or not? And then what the hell happened to it? So I think it's good to do this kind of casting, but I think they have to, you wanted to have all diversity across the board. You want everybody represented. So far, so good. But it would be a big deal to change even one of these roles, and to change two would be really, really big. So we'll see what happens. I like Tony Revolori quite a bit. I think he's very good in Grand Budapest Hotel. I thought he was actually pretty funny and dope as well, so I'm glad that he's got this gig. He looks a little old for high school, but whatever. All right, so that's the third story of the day, and I'm curious how you feel about, people were so upset about the potential changing of Spider-Man's ethnicity. How do you feel about changing the ethnicity of everyone around him? Okay, so we'll see how this turns out. I would probably be game for changing MJ or Gwen. I wouldn't change both. I'd probably keep MJ or Gwen, one of them white, and then maybe I would change everybody else. But, there's a lot of other ethnicities. Queens is a pretty diverse place. I would probably try and get an Asian American in there as well. All right, so anyway, if you watch the Ms. Marvel comic, you could get someone of Middle Eastern descent as well. All right, so those are the three stories of the day. Let's go on to the viewer question from Darcy Keating. Darcy, you have an amazing name. Darcy is from Australia. Darcy, you sound like a character in a movie yourself. So I love it so much. So Darcy says, "Hi Grace, I've got a question that I'm burning to get answered." Well, I can't ignore that. So Darcy says, "Do you think that since Disney is re-releasing their old animated classics in live action, she's talking about the Jungle Book's huge success over the weekend, do you think it's possible that they will start converting some movies into 3D animated movies? Because Jungle Book was practically 3D anyway." It was 3D. I think she means maybe computer animated movies. Hope you can answer. Keep up the good work, Darcy from Australia. I think that's what Darcy does mean, taking them into computer animation. Because, of course, they have re-released some of the Disney hand-drawn 2D classics like The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast in 3D. And they look a little weird. When you put them in, I saw Finding Nemo re-released in 3D, one of the best movie-going experiences I've ever had. But when I saw The Lion King in 3D, it underscored the simplicity of the animation, and it kind of didn't work. It took away from the storybook drawing out. It didn't work so well. Let's just put it that way. It didn't work so well. But do I think they'll redo them as 3D animated movies? I do not think so. I think that they're going to keep going with 3D animated movies like they have. Look how successful Zootopia was. Zootopia is getting into Frozen territory at this point. It's so successful. But what I do think, the reason I picked this question, besides Darcy's name and that she was really enthusiastic about it, is that I think, Darcy, you're correct that the Jungle Book will have an influence on the movies that are made going forward. I think that they will not have such a feminist bent as they have. I think that the live action Disney fairy tale genre got a little bit on a sidetrack with Cinderella and Maleficent. And I think even to some degree, Oz the Great and Powerful had a very strong feminist storyline with the Wicked Witch and why she became the Wicked Witch. And I think that after the success of first Alice and now the Jungle Book, they're really going to try harder to hit all four quadrants. And we'll talk more about what that means on Movie Math later today. But I think that that's what they're going to try and do. They're going to try and have more things that are scary, have more action, appeal to a really broad base. I think the old thinking might have been, well, who likes live action fairy tales? People who like fairy tales. And I think they're probably like, well, you know what, obviously, maybe we should do Mulan. Maybe we should do The Little Mermaid, but maybe play up that Prince Eric stuff. I just feel that you're going to see these things become, and I think that's a positive. I think they shouldn't just be directed at one target. I think that fairy tales and Disney animated movies, when they came out originally, did appeal to everyone. They had mass appeal. That's why they were so successful. So that should be echoed in the new current modern version of them, which is the live action ones. So I think this is very exciting, and I do think that a Mulan Disney movie, which they already have in the works, will probably be fast-tracked after this because this was just so successful. And considering, come on, you've got China as a huge box office region. I mean, wow, if I was Disney, I'd be like, Mulan and Jungle Book 2 are the top of my list right now for live-action fairy tales. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down below think of today's top 3 stories and that viewer question, anything you'd like us to cover tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.